All right, now let's jump into our next publication, and this is the World Port Index, or Pub 150. This is also published by NGA, and it has approximately 3,700 entries for various ports around the world. And unlike distances between ports, it is organized geographically rather than alphabetically. And as you'll see when we hop into the publication, the World Port Index is going to give us a great initial sense of what our port is going to be like, to include the latitude and longitude of the port, the appropriate charts that we want to use, which is an especially helpful feature of this publication, the size and type of harbor there, possible anchorages, and tides and communications that might be applicable for that port. All right, so let's take a look at what this publication looks like. So we're going to use this example to navigate this publication. Your ship is preparing to enter Lagos, Nigeria, and you need the following information. You want to know the harbor size, the harbor type, and the type of shelter afforded. And these are all pieces of information that we can get from World Port Index. So let's go ahead and navigate to that publication. So same as before, I've got it open here on my computer using the NGA website, and this is what the front of that publication looks like. And just like distances between ports, there's some useful front matter to be aware of here. So a lot of the information that we can find in this publication is going to be defined, how NGA decides to define some of those terms, and that's something that we can reference once we take a look at the entries in the publication. The other thing I want to point out here is this world map, which just shows you sort of how the ports are organized here. Again, as I mentioned, they're organized geographically, not alphabetically. But here we go. We want to find out more about Lagos, Nigeria. So just like distance between ports, let's do a Control F. So I'm just going to type in Lagos here and see what comes up. So you can see up here, I have a few different appearances. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at the correct Lagos. So for example, if I look at the first one that comes up, I have the port name right here, and then just to the right of it, we have a country code. And the country code for this Lagos, as you can see, is PT. And I'm looking for Lagos, Nigeria, and that's definitely not the country code for Nigeria. In fact, if I take a look a little bit farther up, you can see that the country associated with this particular list of ports is Portugal. The country is the one that's sort of tabbed a little bit farther out here. So I can see here, this isn't the Lagos that I'm looking for. So let's keep looking. All right, here we go. Again, here's another one. Here the country code is GR, which in this case is Greece. So I'm still not quite there. And now I'm here in Lagos, and you can see just above it, the country associated with this one is Nigeria. So now I'm in the correct spot. And if we take a look back at our slide, we remember that we are looking to find the harbor size, harbor type, and the type of shelter afforded in Lagos. So let's go back to our publication. And if we scroll up to the top of this page, we can see the columns up top. So we've got harbor size right here, harbor type, and shelter. So we have those three columns, they're right in a line, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take the codes listed for Lagos and just pull them. Let's write them in our notes, and then we can look up what each of these codes means. So for Lagos, we see harbor size, there's an L associated with it. For harbor type, we have RN. And then for shelter, we have a G. So I've copied those three codes over here onto my slide. Let's go ahead and take a look at what those codes mean. So if we go back Let's scroll up, and you can see up top here we have a code key. So for harbor size, if you remember, Lagos had an L harbor size, so we can see that that corresponds with large. So we know that the harbor in Lagos is large. Now we go over to harbor type, and our harbor type in Lagos was RN. Now if we go through and look at the code, you see RN indicates river natural. So it's a natural river. And then finally, for shelter afforded, we had a G code associated with Lagos. And we can see here, shelter afforded, G is good. So now we've interpreted all of those three codes, so we know and we can tell our captain that Lagos is a large harbor, and the type is a natural river, and there's good shelter afforded in that location. And that's the kind of information we can grab from this publication. Other things to take a look at, again, if we go back to our publication, there's a few other things that we can see that can be helpful. First of all, if we just want to continue using our example of Lagos, if we just look across the column, not only do we have the latitude and longitude, but we also have this column entitled Publication. And what that refers to is the sailing directions that we'll use if we want to read more about this port. And we'll dig into sailing directions in the next video, but it's great to use World Port Index to help you find which sailing directions will apply. Additionally, you can see in the next column that we have the chart number. So if we were navigating on paper charts, that would be the chart number that we could use. A lot of the times the chart in the DNC, if we're a VMS certified ship, will roughly correspond to that chart number. So that's helpful as well. And then the last set of columns here on the right-hand side include just other miscellaneous information that might be helpful for us to know. Things like tides, overhead limits, anchorages, maximum size of vessel, and if there's a good turning area. So you can see and read those column headers right here at the top of the page. And that's something that you can read further about in that front matter that we walked through very quickly at the beginning if you want to read more. All right, and that concludes our exploration of our first two publications, Pub 150 and Pub 151. In the next videos, we'll be taking a look at sailing directions and the U.S. Coastal Pilot.